Considering the fact that you guys are going with the order book model, what is the main difference between an AMM and an order book model?
Yes, that's a good question, and I think sometimes there's a bit of confusion. An open book model is actually what is the de facto standard for exchanges, for centralized exchanges, right? So things like Coinbase or Robinhood, all large scale, um, high performance exchanges are doing order books. So it's a tried and true design that scales really well and has been battle tested in traditional finance. Um, the question is like, why didn't we use order book designs on Ethereum or all other EVM blockchain? And the reason is order books are not, you cannot implement them on an EVM system because EVM are by default a needs to track global state and is a smart contract that can only run along a single process. It makes those order book designs very complicated and very inefficient to implement. And that's why you need to have had to come up with a new model called the AMN model, and that AMN model was specifically designed to function on the Solidity smart contract paradigm. And so they had to make some compromise. And so one of the compromise is to kind of lose that expressiveness and flexibility of order books. But in exchange, they built something very simple, but also very elegant. So MMs are a very elegant way of doing exchanges. It's just like this constant product equation that allows you to at any time be able to compute the price of an asset. Doesn't matter how low the liquidity. The problem is that it only allows you to do market orders, which is very limiting, especially for more advanced traders that want to have better tools that they're used to in centralized exchanges, and also introduce the concept of impermanent loss. So a lot of people talk about impermanent loss, and that's a type of loss that is only relevant in an AML DEX. And so because we're using an order book system, we actually don't really have impermanent loss per se. We have other types of risks and loss that are the same ones you find in traditional finance, but it's not impermanent loss.
And that's because
Um,
users essentially set the price that they're willing to, how does that work? How is there no impermanent loss for providing liquidity?
yes. So impermanent loss is caused by because of this constant product equation. The price is a ratio of the two assets, and so it's actually a fixed liquidity curve that is imposed by the AMM. And so then it's when you have this change of ratio between the two assets that changes compared to when you entered the position, when you exit, and that change in ratio is impermanent loss. On the order book, it's a bit more complicated. It's more of a decentralized way of setting price, right? So price discovery is not at a single, it's not coming from a single liquidity curve, but it's basically a mixture of buy orders and sell orders. And then whenever an order crosses the spread, that's what the price is more of an emerging property of the DEX as opposed of a thing that you can compute. And so that's where you can allow things like limit orders and also concentrate liquidity because now users, liquid provider can provide liquidity at specific price points, and users can also create swaps at specific price points. Um, the thing that it introduced is a third entity, right? So you have the user, you have the liquidity provider, but the third entity in order books is what we call the smart order router. So it's this basically those off-chain routing bots that the goal is basically to operate the DEX, right? Make sure that everything runs smoothly. And so they're scanning at every block, they're scanning for new orders, they're scanning for liquidity positions, and then they're as best as they can match your orders with liquidity position at the best possible price, and then construction transactions and pushes that submits that to the blockchain. And so here you could have dozens or hundreds of different bots, those smart order routers, each optimizing different strategies and be able to process your orders at scale. And that actually brings an extra level of decentralization of your DEX because the operation of your DEX is performed by this this third entity, which are those option bots.